Hey guys, welcome back. It is podcast day time, our start date, and it's time for a new Trekyards podcast.
Yes.
So, yeah, we're back again, Team Trekyards, Captain Foley, and
Commander Cockings, as always.
what are we going to talk about today, Commander?
Well, we like to keep you guys up to date. There are rumours, there are tidbits, and there is actual bits of information that come out on Discovery. You guys want to hear about Discovery, you want to hear our thoughts on her. So there are two quick things. I guess we'll discuss them piece by piece. The first one, there was a rumour that Discovery might be in a third, although really fourth or fifth, alternate timeline. But then Brian straight away said, no, it is Prime, which is what he'd already said. But the rumour mill, I guess, had been really going at that.
Yeah, and I had to talk about that, and a lot of people were very against that. You know, they don't want another timeline polluting the whole Star Trek universe. So I'm glad that they're sticking on board with the Prime timeline, as long as they don't screw it up.
I mean, it's interesting. I would rather they start fresh, say this is an alternate version where some things are the same, which lets them do their own thing, rather than say this is the same and then we have to have whatever they say as canon, which means if they start changing things because they want to, we have to take that as law. Just like the J.J. Abrams films, the Kelvin is canon because it was on our timeline. Although obviously you can argue other alternate things, but these things that once you say them, we are the people who take that seriously, and you can't just say, oh, well, it was in that movie, or oh, it was in that episode. It's like, well, yeah, but that's the whole point of a continuity of a canon. If you put it Prime, it's got to be in that tapestry, and it's got to add to that tapestry. So if they're going to do if they're going to do too many changes, I'd rather it be a third parallel universe, because then it's like we've got the Mirror universe, we've got the JJ verse, we've got this universe, we've got alternate dimensions that existed for one episode when some time thing happened. I mean, there are other things that have happened.
Well, and then the episode parallels from TNG, where there's bazillion,
At least it'd still be Star Trek, just be Star Trek Universe 3.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you in a way. Just start fresh kind of thing. But at the same time, then it's like, so this isn't the Kelvin verse, this is the Discovery verse, I guess I'd call it, and things like that. I don't know if I like that, but at the same time, if they can keep it Prime universe and keep things consistent and not redesign things too much and too wonky that you kind of get cringy, then I think that they should keep it in the Prime timeline. So if they can do that, more power to them.
The problem with the third universe is, why should we care?
Exactly.
Because then it's only Star Trek by name. It's like, well, we're here 50 years for a reason, because the values and the themes and the characters have all grown with society and us. If you invent a third version, like if you watched the Mirror Universe, if you made a Mirror Universe spin-off show, a lot of people would watch it, but not everyone, because a lot of people just don't care. But you'd still get a strong subset, because that's pre-existing Star Trek. If you did a Kelvin timeline TV show, I think a lot of us would watch it, but not care as much. At least I sort of like Via Beyond, these characters are more like they've gone into themselves, but that's not, another story. But having a third timeline, it's like, well, you don't have to follow any of the rules. You can bring stuff in and then change it. It's like an animated show would be different, or a video game. Like Star Trek Online is it's not the official canon because it's not on screen. It's sort of the future, and it's cool, but it'll be overridden or whatever, they decide to go in the future. And it's cool, and it's a nice little side verse, but it's its own Snowverse. Same for like the Titan novels, all these things. They're like their own little subset of where things go, and I like that. Or of Gods and Men, Renegades are all like subsets, but they're very much based on what we know. And obviously, it's fine to go further and change it. Like you make a third universe and say, "Hey, we are the third universe from Cage onwards," or I don't know.
Yeah, and if you'll recall, when I first heard that this was a prequel, I was one of the first things I said is, well, they've kind of tied their hands now, because it limits what you can do, because we already have established canon. That was my biggest fear when I heard that it was another prequel, is that they tied their hands, and with Enterprise they screwed it up, in my opinion. I mean, don't get me wrong, Enterprise is a good series. I'm rewatching it and I'm actually really enjoying it. There's a lot of great standalone episodes and some cool stuff.
Every show is better when you have to wait a week between, when you can enjoy the character development. When you can have 3 episodes of character development in one day. It's like, wow, that character's doing great. It's like, yeah, but if you watch them week by week, it's like, oh, that character only had 10 minutes every month of screen time. But if you put it together, then it's really awesome. Every show is better when you binge it, although you don't remember it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is my second time watching it straight through on like back to back. So, but yeah, I just don't want them to have their hands tied. I want to see lots of new cool stuff, but I don't want it to mess with established canon. And I think that's a real fine line. That's a tightrope that they need to walk, and they need to do it well. And I'm not sure that they can. I mean, we got to fit in communicators that look Cage era-ish, but not TOS yet, and still look modern for the time that we're setting this, that we're making this show in.
I'm going to ask you a fundamental question, Stuart. Can we ignore the Cage technology? The phaser, or the laser, and the tricorder, and the communicator. Can we ignore that? Is that a bit of canon we can retcon? Because it was an original pilot, and maybe, you know, the only one episode, like, its most canon appearance is in a video transmission from a memory of a hurt person. You know?
I think it can be ignored, but I think it should be alluded to at least in some kind of, in the design of something. I mean, there should be some little reference to it, but yeah, it could be an altered memory, perhaps, or it was an experimental test with just those select ship. I don't know.
Because the fact is that I've said this before, is that you've got to think wider universe. And Star Trek never really took us to that place because they didn't have the money to make the models, or when we went to Enterprise, there is no bigger universe of the Federation itself. You've got to think that this is an intergalactic alliance of hundreds of worlds, into thousands in TNG and beyond. There's a plethora of races, of technology, and of styles. To think that every ship has a Constitution-class style, which is a heavy cruiser, advanced, deep space explorer. Those are three unique things. Take the Grissom, very different. You know, you could there's no reason whatsoever to say this is the style of these ships. It's a style of a class. You know, you look at aircraft. The stealth bomber looks very different stylistically to, an F-16 or whatever. Like, they are very stylistically different because they're different purposes. So, the Discovery is obviously now a canonical ship in this timeline. It looks so different because it's, as we both think, it's sort of a carrier, maybe a craft for getting people onto a planet. What was the word? There was
colony ship.
Yeah, thank you, colony ship. Yeah, or a construction facility. It's a completely different purpose. It keeps some basic cues, but it can look and feel different. So the technology, same thing. In Cage, we don't know how old that technology was. That's fine. This is 10 years before Kirk, but if we take that technology out of the equation, you've got to, then Discovery is very likely going to be a Enterprise sequel with links to TOS. It's not going to be a TOS prequel, because they're not going to predate the TOS tech and make it even more basic. They're going to update the Enterprise tech while giving references to TOS, which is what Axe and I was trying to do, it's fair to say, sort of retro futuristic. Now, the problem with that is obviously then to see it was changed that one step to TOS. But you can always just say that, you know, it had to get simpler, or it got even more advanced, or whatever. There's still a 10-year gap. And so you can make it bulky and look more advanced and go into the next gen of the tech, which is TOS.
Well,
there's actually a time period where you don't see anything beyond this one ship, basically. So there is no greater universe. So why wouldn't there be multiple versions of everything? Why wouldn't there be older,
And they can tie it in. That's where side canon and novels and stuff come in, because, like was mentioned in one of the comments on one of our recent episodes, the reason TOS tech looks so much less advanced than Enterprise era tech is because during the Romulan War, the Romulans found a way to hijack ships using computer viruses and stuff. Yeah. So the TOS style computers went to a more analog, hands-on, push-button kind of thing where you needed to be there, so that it couldn't be taken over remotely. And I love that. I mean, that's a great way to retcon that look. That's a little less advanced, but still, I think. And there's always ways to do that, no matter what they do. Even if they make it super advanced with holograms and stuff, there's probably a way to explain why it doesn't translate to TOS or TNG.
You've got to think, 10 years is both a lot and not a lot of time. 10 years is the jump between the TNG and the Nemesis, or the First Contact. Look at the D to the E. Very different. Look at the uniforms, very different. The phasers have updated from Dustbuster to the other phaser. I mean, they're all stylistically moving in the right direction, but they are very, very, very different.
Look at TOS to the motion picture.
Yeah,
huge difference.
Exactly. So why on earth would that 10-year gap between, especially if you retcon Cage, between the TOS and this especially if you're going post Enterprise that look, that technological style change is very much justifiable, as long as, that's probably why they put it 10 years, because 10 years is a lot can change. When you think about 10 years of our time, obviously now the last 10 years hasn't been that much of a change, because like iPhone to now it's roughly the same, but 70s to 80s, 80s to 90s, like that sort of change of society is fundamental. We keep altering how we look upon the world, and so as long as they don't go so far advanced, as long as they don't ignore, as long as they can fit it in, as long as they sort of disclaimer it somewhere, as long as Brian says in an interview like a year in, but it's like the 60s and the 70s, everything changes, and it's just a stylistic thing. We wanted to, everything is simplified and become very, Art Deco, and that's the style of TOS, but we went for, what is 10 years, that I could see and be absolutely fine. But they need to make at least a note to caring about that, or even say the TOS, the Connie, is a really unusual style, that is a very specific Antares shipyard with a crazy old kook designer. The Constitution line is a line, the uniforms are basically the standard, but everything else, that could be a very specific version. Why would every ship need to have the same interior setup? I mean, you look at the bridges between like a Saratoga to a Galaxy to a Sovereign to an Intrepid, 10-15 year difference. Well, not Saratoga. Well, no, Saratoga, yeah. They're all so different. Well, why wouldn't, yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you said about the decades makes a lot of sense, because a lot's changed from the 80s till now.
Yeah.
Even in the 90s when the smartphones first came out.
Yeah.
That's something we only imagined of in the 80s. Like, I wish I had a smartphone in the 80s. So it's amazing how much just 5-10 years can make technologically wise. But the problem that they have here with fitting it where they did is what I said. They kind of tied their hands. We've got Enterprise and we got TOS. Apparently both in the prime timeline. Mm-hmm. So they got to join the two and meld them and make it good without copying from each one, because we don't want to see copies of what we've already seen. We do want to see something new in most cases, a nice step between kind of thing, but not be too advanced. And as it was mentioned too, when you film something today, you don't want to make it look exactly like you did in the 60s. You want to update it and make it look good for our audiences. So I think that's why I was so worried when I first heard where it was placed in the timeline, because they have the potential of really screwing things up.
Well, the fact is, you look at Enterprise TOS and look at pre-TOS 10-year between. You have phasers. You have phone torpedoes. You have hand phasers. That they've at least, the thing about Enterprise phasers, they only have 2 settings. The TOS one is like 14, so give it a 7-setting phaser. Boom, you've got a more advanced phaser, but less advanced. Tricorder, you give it, some functionality, not others. I mean, if you have all the same tech, because it is roughly the same tech between 2 eras, it's just more powerful, more advanced. You have a Warp 6.5 engine. It's not 7 yet. It's definitely more advanced TOS, Enterprise. I mean, I think there's less of a bridge than you think in terms of what there needs to be, and I think what it is, I think they'll keep the uniforms more similar than anything else. I think that'll be just like JJ. That was really the only thing that stayed very true, was the uniform design. Everything else was like, oh, this is.
I have a question for you then. If Discovery starts airing and they're still using the exact same communicators they were using in Enterprise, will you be disappointed? Will you have wanted to see something new, or are you like, I can understand why they're using those, and then they get issued new phasers halfway through the season, or new communicators halfway through the season that are TOS style? So they're using the exact same ones, but or would you want to see something new? See, a lot of fans are going to want to see new stuff, and a lot of diehard fans are going to want to see what's already established. To see them holding an Enterprise communicator at first, I'd be like, oh, Jesus. Really? But if there's that kind of like in Star Trek Generations, where some have the old uniforms, some have the new uniforms, it's the changeover period. Could you imagine seeing some crew with older communicators, some crew with the newer communicators, because they're just being issued, and the newer communicators are exactly the same as TOS? Again, would you be disappointed to see a TOS communicator? Well, or do you want to see something a little bit more advanced?
It depends. If you... Okay, question throw back at you then. If you saw TOS communicator, the outside is exactly the same, But inside, you've got a flat screen with monitors, you've got touchpads, but the outside is identical. So from a cosplay, from an outside point of view, it's the exact same. You flip it, it's advanced. How do you feel about that? Same look, but actual technological.
I'd feel a little upset.
Okay.
Because why didn't they have that in TOS? Again, you can go back to the whole Romulan War theory that
but think of it just as a fun factor. It's like,
oh, for fun, I'd love to see a more advanced.
But literally exactly the exact same exterior. So for all intents and purposes, it's because someone pointed out, it's like, imagine TOS was just someone's TV show from the perspective of like a holodeck simulation. They got most things right, but the technology, obviously, if they bridged that, if they actually added sort of enhancements to the TOS tech, so it looks identical, but as soon as you get up close, the TOS communicator has internals, the phaser has touch stuns on the top, but the designs are exactly the same, but with all the advancements. Then you could justify it linking more to TNG a little bit, I suppose, or the movies even a little bit. It's like retroactively advancing TOS, but if the style is the same, but giving it the feel of what we had, is that kind of an interesting in-between step? It's like saying, well, it looks the same, but we can now do things with it. It's a more advanced version. It's the 2016 version of the same thing, but it's the same design, just we've made it more advanced, but only to ourselves. By that point, it's not canon, but then you just say it's a film thing. It's a filmic thing, and it's one of the things where you can look beyond it, because, like in Star Trek 4, the bird of prey changes sizes 3 times in the film. And we've just got to look past that, because there's nothing you can do to rectify it. There just isn't.
It would upset me, and it wouldn't. I would love to see a new, on the outside looks exactly like a TOS communicator, inside a little bit more advanced, more functionality. I always thought they should have that. I mean, add it if they could. But then the fanboy in me is like, well, it doesn't tie in with what we've seen already, which is a shame.
Well, then it's not really canon, then, is it?
Exactly. At the same time, I'd be kind of excited, going, well, it is cool looking, though. This is neat. This is how it should have been in the TOS. And then you picture TOS, them using it with that functionality. They just never really used it or showed it. I mean,
well, to be fair, it's like, Spock looks at his things and says, I detect these things, but nothing's being seen. It's just blinky buttons. But you just replace that with more touchscreeny things. It's like, oh, look, the information's like... Anyway, but I'll answer your question, though. I would be very concerned, in the sense, if I saw the Enterprise tech, because it's so far ahead of Enterprise. You look at... I mean, okay, like a M16 hasn't changed much in 50 years, but it's just a firing a projectile. There's nothing to it. Technology has changed, and the look has changed, and nothing in our society has been like 60 years, 70 years and hasn't changed. Of that sort of technological thing, most because 70 years ago there wasn't technology. I mean, cars have 4 wheels and a chassis, but stylistically they go everywhere. So it's a bit difficult to say compared to cars, because there's 100 different variations.
Well, but as the director says, a lot of the military aircraft using the same shell of the plane, but all the avionics are brand new.
Well, yes, but then it would be, like I said with TOS, it'd have the same exterior, but it'd be completely different internally. Like there's no reason to have a communicator, a 70-year-old communicator. That's what you're saying. Starfleet ship
I was just using it as an example.
But
they wouldn't be using that obviously.
But I'd be happy to see in an episode them say, we've got the prototype of the new communicator, it is the TOS communicator. Same with phaser. That I'd love to see, but give it its own identity, not be Cage. I'm fine with you to retcon Cage tech, because it doesn't work.
Well, they can even reference that the last experimental prototypes they were using were a failure. This is the new one. The new contract company supplied us this.
Yeah, give a quick reference, make it fun. It depends I think it all depends if, and this is like Into Darkness versus Beyond. If a true fan who gets it is writing the script, or someone who sort of understands but not really, tries to make it work but fails. So if it's like, that'll be the difference. If these writers actually get it. And can channel it, and allow the freedom to channel what should be channeled into it to make these references work, or it's super obvious or not there at all. So it's going to be very interesting.
That just made me think of something interesting.
Okay.
We know that Nicholas Meyer's in charge here, and if you notice, when Nicholas Meyer took over Star Trek II, he made a big change in uniforms, tech, the look of the bridge. Well,
radical different.
More of a militaristic feel, and Do you think that this series is going to reflect that kind of? I think personally, my opinion is yes. I think that's what made Star Trek 2 successful. The new uniforms were bang on accurate, awesome.
Well, the problem with that is that he was pushing into the future of the future.
Not much though, like.
Well, yeah, but you can justify everything by they updated. The TNG wasn't even thought yet. You know,
the TOS ends. You got the TOS uniforms, and you go to motion picture, and it's like 5 to 10 years later for the refit. So they used those uniforms for 5 to 10 years, and then changed to the Wrath of Khan uniforms.
Yes,
it seems a little bit like, again, that was a failure. We didn't want to go with that company because they were not supplying the uniforms we needed or whatever.
I think why would you hire Nicholas Meyer except to make a Star Trek story at its core that happens to be in the Star Trek universe? He did that twice, and both were amazing. You know, so I think he's the guy you'd want to reinvent it. It'll just depend how they do it, because if they're gonna mess up or change too many things, just don't have it in the Prime universe. It is that simple. Or make a clear statement that this is Prime, but retconning TOS Tech. So TOS Tech is now this other thing. Okay. This is the correct TOS Tech.
Well, if you're thinking if they're doing the serialized thing with the massive story arcs, what if the whole time we're thinking this is Prime Universe, and in the very last episode of the very last season, you find out this was not the Prime timeline. This was something alternate. Maybe even developing into the Terran Empire or something. I'm just using that as an example. Would you be annoyed that the whole time you thought it was Prime and all these little inconsistencies bothered you, and then at the end you're like, oh my god, it wasn't the Prime timeline. That's the twist.
How many seasons in this fictional version of the show do we get to enjoy?
I don't know. I have no idea. I just
well, I think
I'm just saying a lot of times those kind of twists at the end of shows, like Stranger Things, you know, that kind of reveal at the last episode or two is like cool.
Look at Enterprise. As the show went on, they brought it closer and closer to Star Trek, closer and closer to what we knew, closer references, and it got better and better. So I think if every year Discovery goes on, they'll be wanting to put new things in. TNG at the start didn't want to reference anything from TOS. Then they had how many actors from the show, how many references, you know. So I think the longer it goes, the more references it'll have. Then at the end, if you say it's not Prime, it's like, okay, well, you could have said that at the start. Because it's like JJ.
The first episode was the Naked Now.
Yeah, well, that was the strange exception. That was the strange exception. Everything. Yeah. I think it's just like with JJ Abrams. If he had said parallel universe from this get go, then all the inconsistencies are fine. It's your universe. So either start it's your own thing, or be in Prime and follow the rules because they're there for a reason. Or don't bother going Prime. Why bother being in the Prime universe if you're not going to adhere to the Prime universe timeline? Why? There's no point.
Exactly. Yeah.
Be strong with your convictions and say this is a parallel alternate Star Trek timeline, just like J.J. Abrams, but TV better, whatever. But I think it brings us on to our next topic, Stuart, which is what is our next thing?
I saw something the other day. I kind of scrolled past it, but it was referring to redesigning established Star Trek aliens.
Yes, they're doing a big thing about trying to make it different.
Which, to be fair, they did for Enterprise because the Andorians had a different look than
but it was very but it was very almost the same.
But that can also be explained away as different region of Andor has different, like we have black people, white people. It's kind of the same thing, just different antenna shapes, different antenna placement.
Well, the irony is, I thought Enterprise did it perfectly. I thought this is what we would have done if they had the money. Because Enterprise, you can't take it as this is a guy in a white wig with blue paint and two just little horns. I mean, that's not what it would have been if you'd even if you'd said to Gene.
To be fair, they weren't horns up here; they were back here, and they were.
It's like if they'd given Gene $10,000 to flush out that alien, it wouldn't look the same. You give, as soon as you give them money, the Klingons look interesting. So, and that's how we say they always looked now. So Enterprise, I think now I've got Enterprise. Those are the definitive versions of those aliens. Andorians look like this, Terrorites look like that, Vulcans look like this. Yeah. If they re-change that, it's like, well, now it's not linking to anything. I'm more than happy to have Enterprise with the definitive on all of them because they look way better and integrated. I mean, what does that even mean? Change them. I mean, for example, how do you change Andorian to make even worth saying as a news story, they're going to be changed. I mean, what do you do to that?
I don't know. To reuse an older production's exact makeup techniques and stuff, I can understand them not wanting to do that, and kind of a little spin of their own. But yeah, how do you do it and make it realistic and something that is a natural progression?
Well, would you be interested if they're like hyper real with it? So like Andorians looked ultra real. Like, I don't know, all the aliens, like, really raw, very, very real, very, very... this is what they would look like in real life.
I have no problem with that. I don't know what that means exactly. Like,
well, yeah, it's like, surely Enterprise did the best they could, and they had a good budget.
Yeah.
It's like, what more can you do with these people? What more can you do with these aliens without radically changing design for a reason? I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing, like... Well, we saw the white Andorians and the blue Andorians. I mean, you know, a really dark mauve Andorian. It's like, well, they're from the other side of the planet. I mean, that sort of re-change, or the antenna are now like I don't know, pointy. It's like, well, okay, they're from this
continent. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine because it's Andorian Sigma. You know, it's this side race of race of this species.
Just not like a side race, just.
Well, no, in the sense that Asians are a different race to...
Yeah.
You know, that sort of thing. So it's a separate on the planet. But, like... And I also want to bring one more thing that he said. Nicholas Meyer also said in an interview, don't have... Also, he said, lower your expectations, Trek fans. Lower them. For Star Trek, for the new Star Trek. Direct quote, lower your expectations. Which is so interesting that it's like with the new Star Wars. How could JJ fit everyone's expectations? So everyone... You know, it's a remake to some extent, but still a good movie. How do you do the next Star Trek show and all of the eyes of the sci-fi community are on you with the most ravenous fan base in the world on you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and also make it something that, just like TNG, builds a new audience for the next 10, 15... Because you got to think, this isn't just for Trekkies. It can't be. If you're not building a new audience, you're not going to survive...
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, Trekkies are still quite young, relatively speaking, so we'll be here. I mean, you guys, you and my dad will be around for another 50 years. That's a long time for Trek to evolve. I'll be here for another 90 years, 80 years, you know, so, you know, more generations of my Trek to come. But you got to get these new people. You got to make it another generational thing to get the 12-year-olds
old, man. You think I'm really old?
No. It's just you and my dad in the same vaguer bracket than we are.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what to say about the alien thing. The alien thing, I don't change them too much. There's nothing you can really do. I mean, we know what they look like. We've seen them in Enterprise. We've seen them in Prime Timeline.
Okay.
We've seen them in JJ. They're all...
Okay, well, I want to throw this out to you then. 2 examples straight away. Gorn. They were in TOS, completely redesigned for Enterprise, completely redesigned for JJ, the video game. Which one is the real one? Which one is the best one for you to go with?
You can retcon them that they're all the same, all from the same planet.
I know that. Yeah. That's smarty pants answer.
Personally, I think they could make a Gorn look a lot better than they did in Amir Darkly even now.
Yeah, I'm not overly fond of that one. It was too dinosaur-y.
Neither am I. The video game ones, as much as I'm not a huge fan of the JJ verse, the video game Gorn are amazing. I love them.
Well, they're definitely dinosaurs.
That would be I think that'd be a great take on them. But then how do you explain the TOS Gorn?
Well,
it was made in the 60s, so just ignore it, please. Just imagine something else there.
The irony is, I would rather see every single alien be practical.
No, I don't think they'll do that. I think
because
CG.
look at Star Wars. Look at those new cantina scenes. Like, they've got every alien, and it was so tangible. You can make a Gorn makeup that is like...
They did the same thing in Beyond. They were practical aliens.
Yeah, and they were real. They were there. I mean, you give a Gorn a fake head, you give it an animatronic thing. I mean, come on, look at Farscape. Every alien is an animatronic, and all the aliens, but 3 of them are, and you feel exactly the full emotions from as every other character. Like, you can give aliens so many different makeups, the absolute quality. You don't need CG. So I would happily see a Gorn that is a very fleshed out version of the TOS version. I'd rather have that than the dinosaur.
Okay, yeah, if they can do it practically and make it look good, like I would love to see like Lieutenant Eric's, one of his race as part of the crew. Now we have the technology to do that.
Yes.
But that being said, because we have CGI technology, we can have some really fantastical aliens that really practically you couldn't make.
I agree.
See, I love seeing fantastical aliens and stuff in Star Trek. That's what I think the diversity of the universe would be like. So it's just somebody in a suit,
Well, it's like saying,
extra arm attached.
why wouldn't you have another sort of life form? Why wouldn't you have a cloud life form, a thorium life form? Why all of us as two legs? But I just mean in the sense of the characters we already know from Star Trek. Like, I don't feel like you need to CG any of them necessarily. I mean, Tholian. I like the Enterprise version. I'd rather than keep the Enterprise one. But I don't know how far you can go. I mean, how many other alien races do we know that they can modify? Like, there isn't that many. I mean, Klingons. If they change Klingons, I mean, that would be terrifyingly stupid.
All I'd want to see of Klingons is ridged foreheads and smooth foreheads, both represented in this new series.
And to be fair,
it's the perfect time period, and that's fine. I'd be fine with that.
And to be fair, throw in the JJ verse ones as well. They were fine, as long as you have other ones with hair.
They were more of a smooth ridge, like the marriage of the two, the smooth and the ridge.
But you have.
So I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
And as for the Tholian, I got to just say that there are different castes of Tholians. There's the warriors, there's the politicians, there's all that. So yes, they'd have different looks. Again, different regions of the planet or different exosuits, as it were.
I just don't know what they mean by reinventing things and changing them. And for the most part,
maybe they're just putting out disinformation. It's a disinformation campaign to get us speculating and worried that the new show is going to absolutely suck when it won't.
On that note, guys, I think we've talked about this enough. Let us know your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. I think shooting soonish. It's not going to be released for a while now, unfortunately, but hopefully
they're starting in November to film. Yes,
I believe so. But I cannot wait to start seeing some screen caps, some stills, some production images. See our first uniform, see our first bit of tech. I mean, that will be, then we can really get we can get a real sense of where they're going, because that is something we need to see before we really know how we should feel about this.
Yeah, I agree.
Any last thoughts, Stuart, before we close out?
No, I just hope that they do it justice and do what. I don't know. I think either way they go, somebody's going to be disappointed and somebody's going to be ecstatic. So,
well, Stuart, let's close out with, as long as there are new ships to look at, we'll be happy.
And I'm sure there will be. Absolutely.
We know there will be, Stuart. We know there will be. All right. So tune next week from the Trekyards podcast, guys. If you want to support the show, go to our website, trekyards.com, click the donate button, or Patreon, our monthly donation service, which helps us keep the lights on, actually keep the show coming to you every day, guys. Wow. So until next time, guys, I'm Conrad Hawkins.
And I'm Captain Foley.
See you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.